What's going on, Soul Tribe? And welcome to Alchemist Astrology. Justin here, and are you ready to get into those Lunar Shenanigans, which is a weekly show that goes over the astrology of the moon, what sign it's in, what phase it's in, when it happens to go void of course, and to get an understanding as the moon is making different aspects with the other celestial bodies and how that may show up as we go through each of these weeks. So it's nice to sync with that good old moon. Now this week is looking starts off a bit tougher of the beginning of the week. We have those monthly conjunctions that the moon has with Mars and then later with Saturn, where it'll be happening between the new moon phases. So kind of a weird ending, but in a maybe more serious beginning as we're getting into this stuff. We have the equinox that's going to be happening, but as we move on later into the week, there are these opportunities for ease that show up. There's a number of sextiles that the moon is making with the planets that we'll get into here in a moment. Now, if you want to support the work that I'm doing, further down in the description box there's a link for my Patreon page. Got two tiers on there. One of them will get you access to the Lucky Day podcast, which is a monthly show talking about the most auspicious dates for each month for whatever endeavor that you're wanting to initiate. And then the other one will give you access to that, plus a personalized monthly transit report from me. You get a video, all sorts of descriptions, get to see how I do my thing. Who doesn't want that? So if that's something that interests you, definitely go check that out. But let's go ahead and jump into this thing, because I'm going to be going over the week of March 17th through the 23rd. Now, when we get to the 17th here, this is when we get to one of the more harder aspects that the moon is making. The nice thing though is that we got Big Papa in the mix, kind of adding some cushion there for this. But the first aspect that the moon is going to be making is a conjunction with Mercury, and also we got Mars in that conjunction spell as well. So when you think about that aspect, the conjunction is a fusion of energy, and it's not inherently positive or negative. It just depends on the players that are in the mix. And with Mars being there, being one of the malefics, it may be a bit more tenser than we would if it were with like Jupiter or with Venus. And then we also got here too, Mercury is not in the best shape right now. It's retrograde in the sign of its fall and its detriment. So this is kind of a bit of a trickier one for the moon. I would say when you think about the moon in terms of dealing with like travel and things like that and wanderings, that was some of the more ancient term. Voyages were some of the ancient Hellenistic terms that the moon got significators of. I'd be mindful of how we're driving, how we're traveling. Just make sure that we're paying attention. Make sure to just keep track of just like schedules within, of course, with everything that's going on, all these martial things that are happening. That could be something that we just really see there, whether it's how things on a global scale are changing as far as travel. We think about those kind of mercurial things, communication, even thinking about on a more kind of city basis, thinking about one of the other significators of the moon. This could be where you're noticing maybe different changes to various places. Things we're talking Mars here, so this could be places maybe shutting down, properties, maybe some sort of properties damage. This is those sort of trickier things that go into there. But Jupiter's providing that ease there with the trine, because I don't want to just say that it's just all just a Marshall storm there. Again, Jupiter's trying to provide some sort of relief now. It's moving direct, and when we think about the trine, this is when the celestial bodies are 120 degrees apart from one another, so they're in those like elements of water signs. And the nice thing too, to add on to this, the kind of beneficial nature of this, is that both the moon and Jupiter are in mutual reception, with Jupiter being in the house of Cancer, which is the moon's house, and then we talk about Pisces, which traditionally was ruled by Big Papa. So that's really nice too. There's this connection that's really happening there. One of the more positive trines that happen during this period when the moon makes those goes twice a month as compared to when it's in Scorpio. So this is really nice there. So this could be maybe talks around, let's say, for example, someone's trying to close down a park. Or I remember there was this petition they were going to push back some of the forest lands to add some sort of buildings and things. And there was this vote that ended up happening with that. This was sort of this more kind of local council. So that would be just as an example of what I would see with that, where there may be some sort of martial thing, but then Jupiter may come through and just some sort of where things don't go completely worst case. So, bringing some sort of ease into there. But I would also be mindful too about just miscommunications, of course, misunderstandings. When we're in this water energy, all we got right now, if you're looking at the chart here, I have it when the moon's forming that trine with Jupiter. But if you look right now, all the celestial bodies are either in water or fire signs. So this to me would be a really easy spell for altercations. I already know that. I had remember just talked with someone not too long ago that got into a bit of a tiff there. So gotta be mindful about that. And I think if we can catch those things kind of early on, then that Jupiter shines through. No one's getting hurt. The days are going on fine. We just kind of move it along. This could be too, even just like if there's been a bit of a, let's say a disturbance, let's say with Mercury having been retrograde, maybe your routes have been changed and things like that. That Jupiter maybe could bring in some indication that maybe there's going to be some relief from that, especially once Mercury starts moving direct here. So just some things to think about, I think, on this first day, kind of a bit of a complex one there. And this would be one, too, to check to see where you have Pisces, what house or houses that you have Pisces in, because that's going to be, especially if, or not just Pisces, but whatever your mutable signs, that'll be Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius. Any of those planets going through that is going to be a more active time for you. And that's one way to really kind of follow the moon, to see how the moon relates to your natal planets, especially when we have those more harder aspects or challenging aspects. And even comparing to when we have more easier aspects, like the trine, when the moon's trining your Jupiter, how that's looking like. So that's more so ways to tune in on that on a personal level there. Now we get to the next day here, the 18th. And before the moon enters into Aries, we have the new moon that's going to be happening at about 6:23 p.m. Pacific time. And it's going to be happening at about 28 degrees and 27 minutes of Pisces. Now, when you look at this chart just as the new moon chart, the negative about this is that yeah, we got co-presence with Mars, so that's not the greatest there. But the one kind of nice thing that I want to point out here is that even though Venus is just separating from Jupiter, they're still within really close square to one another. So this full moon, or excuse me, this new moon seems like there's a chance to hopefully bring in some beneficence, but it's with a challenge. I feel like with the benefics being squared there. There's something that's going to require some effort, some action there with those martial qualities and are being infused in this new moon. But the new moons are when the moon and the sun are conjunct one another. We're starting off a new lunar month, and this is, now we're settling in after all of the changes that have happened with the eclipses, because the last new moon was an eclipse and then the full moon was an eclipse. So now we're, after all of those shifts that are happening, how are we settling into now that we're getting to the first normal lunation again? What is this new normal sort of, what does that feel like when we're talking about with this Pisces energy? But also, what is that going to look like going into once we move into the equinox? We got a couple of days for that. Mercury's going to be, like I said, stationing direct on the same day. So there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be moving forward as we move towards the end here. And it's like we're the transits are building up. Everyone's getting close to Saturn. So that's going to be some trickiness that coming up there too, when we're just looking at how this is going to shape up over the month. So just a couple of things to think about with this new moon. And then when we get to about 9:02 p.m. Pacific time, the moon will move into Aries. And when we look at the lay of the land of this one for the moon, it's going to be talking with both benefics, which is great. But first it has to get through Saturn, who's still here at early degrees of Aries. So it's like we even get out of this, we start this full or this new moon off and this new lunation off with some seriousness. And let's get over to let's talk about that, because we get to the 19th here of March. And now the moon's waxing and light's gaining. And we have that conjunction with Saturn. Now, when you think about the things with Saturn is a heavy energy. It's one that can lead to delays and constraints, restrictions. There's this depression with Saturn can lead to this laziness. There's a deceitful quality with Saturn. But one thing that I wanted to kind of bring attention to when we're talking about conjunctions too, this is the new process of things. This is the seeding process of the when those planets are forming together. And when you think about this stuff with Saturn, one of the things with Saturn that was associated with it was with waterside trades, and seeing how that's changing and how those routes are been going on, paying attention to those sort of nautical things that are happening, because there's been a lot of activity that's been going on there, and what is that going to mean going into this? That could be something that really shows up very importantly in this lunation, in thinking about how when you got that moon square Jupiter too, because that's a kind of nice thing about this day, even though there's that Saturnian influence that's happening. Jupiter's there to kind of catch the moon later to process that, to make sense of these new maybe restraints and restrictions that are happening. This could be in how one is gaining things versus how you're spending. That could be one, because those are some significators of the moon. Maybe there's some new restrictions around that. We're talking like maybe price increases. There's some sort of taxes that are going on, something along those lines. It could even be where you Saturn, we're thinking about things that are for the long term. It's not quite how abrupt things can be with Mars, for example. These are more things that take time and break things down, and so that's. And we're talking about too when these aspects are happening with, when we're talking in classical terms, these would be as far as the traditional planets, Jupiter and Saturn would be the slowest ones. Jupiter taking 12 years to go around the zodiac, as opposed to Saturn taking about 30 to go around about 29 and maybe some change. And we're thinking about how we with what maybe new restraints and things and restrictions that Saturn may be imposing, we're thinking about how that is affecting the inheritance. When we're talking about Jupiter, the good things, the relief from bondage, what does that, how do we get relief from whatever new Saturnian thing that may be introduced with this conjunction with the moon? What that would be something I would pay attention to, not just the immediate things, but the kind of bigger long-term things that may be trying to be done in a secretive way. That's something that Saturn does. So, and considering too, this conjunction is going to be happening while both Saturn and the moon are under the beams of the sun. So there's already that hidden quality to it. There may be some things that are trying to pull the attention one way. Saturn's a great actor. Saturn's one that can say, you can't read Saturn. And so that's something to pay attention to, making sure to do extra research, to cross-check, to check news and things like that. Have a number of sources that one is pulling from to get a good grounded perspective of how you should move, depending on your how this may be showing up in your chart. And this was something too, if I didn't mention, now with the moon entering into Aries, those, if you have especially cardinal placements, that's going to be Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Those Aries placements, and when those planets start entering into Aries, are going to be working more actively with you. So tune in again, while watching the moon gives you a good preview of that. The moon might move pretty fast compared to the other celestial bodies, but when we're talking about by sign, the moon stays in there for a couple of days at a time. So this is a good way to get, and it does this once a month. So it's a good way to check in how you're feeling about certain transits and certain themes in your life, so that you can spot these themes when bigger planets like Saturn now for cardinal places is moving through there. So just something just another thing to kind of think about. Now we get to the 20th of March. It's another big day. Like I said, if we're looking at the chart here, the sun just entered into Aries. So happy solar return there, Aries suns. And it's actually kind of nice to get this moon conjunct Venus that's going to be happening. I think the moon's just separating from Venus before the sun enters in there on the solstice. Let me pull up pull up the chart really quick. I'll find it later. But I want to say that that's going to be like right before, so you get a little bit of sweetness there as we're entering into that. But one thing I like about the moon conjunct Venus, this Venus deals with those things of love, wants to bring in that sort of nurturing quality that both the moon and Venus share with one another. There's a high devotion with Venus. And so this is, to me, with the moon conjunct Venus, this could be a great time to connect with those friendship, those companions, that have that sense of community, because I think that these sort of martial and Saturnian aspects, the harder aspects, can feel a bit overwhelming when one is taking it all on by themselves and processing that alone. It's good to have those different perspectives to bounce things off of, to get infinite, to pull resources together, to try to bring some goodness, some gifts, even if it's not something tangible, something that sense of ease, that sense of some kind of comfort, that sense of laughter, of something of joy, to remember the sweeter things, the beautiful things, and to take in time for that, as that makes sense in one's journey. Because it's not, I think it's easy to just to and you see that when if you read different books by the early astrologers, you'll see that sort of that wrestling between why the malefic transits seem to stand out more than those benefic ones. And you can see benefic things when it's happening too, but it's I liked the way that I remember, I think it was in Vedius's book, an anthology, where he was talking about that, where you have this, let's say, like white paint, and if you get any, let's say, drop any colors in it, that's it. It's already blended in there. There's still maybe majority of it, it's still beautiful, but there's something that now it's blemished some. It's lost its value in a sense. It's been diminished in some sort of way. But these are the times to try to bring in some of that, to balance that out, because there's both benefics and malefics in the sky. And I think that with the just conjunct Venus, this could be those times where we have to make those opportunities. But I also think, too, that this is just seeing how relationships are maybe changing, maybe how we're places that we used to be able to travel, maybe that's not available at the moment, or even how one maybe thought that they love something that could be changing. It could be just because you got Saturn in the mix there as well when this is happening. There could be just thinking about maybe even like long-term friends or relationships that are shifting, the people that are areas, or however that might look, whatever scope we're talking about. There may be these new changes in relationships, new endings, new beginnings that are happening. So this is gonna be something to kind of watch, to see if any sort of kind of prominent relationships, whether it be between countries, between friends, between family, however that happens to show up there. And then after the moon goes through all that, pretty busy time for the moon. I like it though. Before I talk about entering the Taurus, one thing that there is this little sweet pocket where the moon is enclosed by the benefics for a bit when it's separating from Jupiter and applying to Venus. So hopefully, just I think as an invitation to invite some goodness, to bottle up some goodness with you. I think there's something to kind of think about there. But then the moon around pretty late, around well, at least late here, 11:35 p.m. Pacific time, the moon will move into Taurus, and I have the chart of the moon at 0 degrees of Taurus here. And look at this: the both of the luminaries are in their signs of exaltations, so they're both raised up here. To me, with this happening, something about this gives a clear vision. And I'm more thinking from it just again with the luminaries had this connotation of like of vision, of sight, of seeing things, of clear. They're the lights, and with them both just raised up there, there's something feels nice about that period of time that we have, with both of them being in that kind of that strong condition like that. So there's one thing I think to also just kind of think about or to consider with this one, now that the moon's moving into Taurus, just to think about it more on a personal level, to kind of move if you have a lot of fixed placements, that's going to be Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, then this going to be activating more personally for you. So something to just kind of tune into there. But even looking at the landscape of the moon, it is definitely more easier aspects that is going to be happening. It's going to form sextiles with Mars and Mercury, going to get a sextile with Jupiter. So a lot of easier transits that are going to be going on there. And let me talk about this next one that's happening with Mercury. Because on the 21st, we get that sextile, and that's when the celestial bodies are 60 degrees apart from one another. So they're in those like, but with them being both nocturnal signs, when we're talking about Pisces and Taurus here, signs that see each other like that, it's not as strong as or as beneficial as the trine aspect, but it's the next best thing. It requires a bit of effort, but it can create these opportunities for collaboration. It can create these where different doors can open up, where there are different opportunities that can happen. And with it happening with Mercury, this could be maybe hearing some sort of news about some sort of, now that Mercury's just stationed direct on the 20th, this could be where, so maybe like a discovery is made in some sort of thing, or this could be where hearing some sort of positive news when that's coming through. That, I mean, one positive thing, I mean, Mercury's direct, so that's already a bit of good news there. But this could be where we also see just more opportunities for maybe some sort of travel starting to potentially open back up, or just like, I don't mean like you like just 100% back to normal, but you notice, let's say if we had a road that had like 3 lanes closed, now we just have 2 of them closed. So we're slowly getting back to where things are moving, some sense of quote unquote normalcy. So that could be something. Again, the sextiles are kind of softer ones, so we'll see what happens with that one there with Mercury. Some chance for some sort of opportunities to, maybe there's some sort of sales that sort of happens, that maybe happen to be going shopping, getting some groceries, and some sort of thing. So, but whatever that could be, just some hopefully some lighter things that could be happening with that sextile there. Then on the 22nd of March, the moon is going to form one with Jupiter and with Mars. Now, this could be where we see maybe some actions towards some goodness. This almost gives this feeling of, when you think about Jupiter and Mars, that contrast, Jupiter representing that sense of truth, whereas Mars is that sense of lies. This could be where there's some sort of, when you think about the moon representing the public, maybe there's some sort of thing where some sort of truth that's revealed that was, and now, or that helped to eliminate some sort of martial thing that was going on there. Where the sextiles are easier aspects, it's still Mars, so it still gives me some sort of, maybe there's some sort of work that's happened to be done in order to get some sort of justice. Let's say, thinking about another Jupiterian or definition, but there could be something along those lines, some sort of thing being, some sort of progress maybe being made there possibly. So that would be something to kind of look out for there. Opportunities for, and maybe even seeing too, like with, see how maybe what abundance is available, or what sort of resources or things that are available with Jupiter. Then that gives one an opportunity to make some sort of moves, to have a better idea of what action ones can take for working with Mars more constructively. So that's another thing that could potentially happen there. Some things there. Even just thinking about, just even on a more kind of lighter, like a lighter interpretation of that, I'm thinking about Jupiter representing children. This could be if you have one who have kids, trying to get together, get a group together, maybe have some sort of play date, some kind of party, something where going outside, getting a little neighborhood thing together, a little group thing. So that could be another, get the energies, have the kids get the energy moving. So that could be something, just another kind of nice thing to work with that one. Then we get to the last day here, which is the 23rd of March. and the moon's going to move out of Taurus and move into Gemini at about 1:08 a.m. Pacific time. And when we look at the lay of the land with this one, this is another, we get a couple of harder aspects that's going to be happening. We're going to have the first square that's going to happen of the with Mars, or kind of like hard aspect with Mars. That we'll have that more, talk about that more next week, of the lunation that we get twice a month with that. We get squares with square with Mercury. That's going to be, and which we'll actually talk about here in a sec. When then the moon's going to have a number of sextiles too. That's going to happen between the Sun, Saturn, and Venus. That's going to be happening. It's not being witnessed by Big Papa right now, but thankfully again we got Venus in the mix, at least for a little bit. But when we get into, when we're looking at the 23rd, the moon's going to form that sextile with the sun, is going to form one with Saturn. And when we think about that sextile with the sun, this is an opportunity. It's hopefully to that there would be some ease that's created, that some sort of, when we're talking about those long-term things, when we that conjunction with Saturn, hopefully this is getting an idea of what's happening long game. When you think about the sun representing the king, or the rulers of the, just the rulers in general, the authorities over the masses, this could be some sort of news coming in with that, and that may be with that moon square Mercury, there may be some tension around that. So that could be something to pay attention to there, figuring out how to work with Saturn in your hand, which there's not always the best, but at least with something with this, when we're thinking about the sextile, it's making those Saturnian themes where it's like, okay, this is where this is going to be heading, so I'm going to have to make this move in response. Let's say there's something with your surroundings that you're not caring for. Then thinking about that move, it's not something that can always happen overnight when we're talking about with Saturn. So it's like, how do I make what do I have in control of right now? Who can I maybe even with that sun get some help from, maybe with the sun representing that idea of friendships. Maybe this could be where some friends come into the mix, some sort of support comes into happens to help to alleviate some of the Saturnian things. So it's a pretty just sort of mild, or kind of mild week across the board. It feels like let me go ahead actually and switch back over. But yeah, a lot of this feels like, as we're getting into the start of this, it's a lot of adjusting that's happening. There's a lot of things that are starting, as we saw with those series of conjunctions, that lead a lot to the imagination to try to comprehend all of the various things that could potentially happen. And so, like, you could see where then when we get to those kind of harder aspects with Saturn and with Mars, where that can create those anxieties and things. But that's where I think when we have those aspects with Jupiter and Venus, those are always invitations to, again, kind of cling to community, to find out, to have that, what sort of support do you have? Because it's where I just think that it's one of those things that it's good to have people on your side, and it's good to have those that you can count on, and that they can count on you. So it'll be interesting to see how this lunar cycle starts, where these things kind of go, how these things are moving. But I think that there's two, and I should have made more of a point of this, to talk about some things astronomically that's going to be happening, because now, if depending on what time you get up, and depending on if you get up before the sunrise, we'll be able to, Mars is going to be visible rising now. So that's going to be something that's going to be fresh to the sky. We haven't been able to see Mars for a while, since it's been in that conjunction with the sun for months now. But now the sun's starting to clear away from Mars, so we'll be able to see that rising. So that's going to be something too. And Mars is, despite the the definitions with Mars. Mars is a neat one to see. It's surprising to watch that in the sky. I remember when we had first saw that right next to the moon, it was just like, oh, when Mars was having that retrograde in Cancer, that was something else. That was neat to see Mars there. It is a startling sort of thing to have all these kind of white stars and then bam, there's Mars. So that's something to pay attention to, and also Venus in the evening time. And and Mercury's in that field too. When we're talking about being able to see planets rising, Mercury's visible right now too. So that's something. That's the only one that we haven't seen yet. So yeah, hopefully we can. But the sky's been so cloudy, so hopefully we'll be able to catch that one here soon. But yeah, Mercury's in the sky too. And also, if you in the evening time, you'll be able to catch Venus. That's going to be that. Yeah, that's going to be. It is now an evening star. So that's something I would get out to get there, see Venus, especially with that with that Moon Venus conjunction. That's always really nice to see that in the sky. That's always a really beautiful sight when, especially when the moon is. It almost looks like some sort of like an earring or something, some sort of jewel that you would see hanging. It's really cool to watch that. So watch it in the sky. Need to sync up with the natural clock like that, the Earth clock. So. But yeah, that's pretty much everything there for the lunar shenanigans this month. So I would love to hear how things have been working out for you. I know last week I had it was a bit of a bit of a rougher one. I had actually. Right now, Mars is squaring my moon by sign, but right at that exact square, I mentioned I'd hurt my back, and then I'd been fighting this cold. I got taken through the ringer, but we're getting fine, we're improving, more or less, and yeah, so I'm just ready to get out of that. The moon's in when I'm recording this right now. The moon's in Aquarius, and it's meh, like that Aquarius time tends to be in my chart, but. Yeah, I'd love to hear how this week has been going for you, and if that's something that you want to follow more closely and look into that, down in the description box is a link for to book a consultation with me. So definitely check that out. My email's down there if you have any questions. I have playlists for both the Lunar Shenanigans and the Celestial News Monthly. That's where I talk about from the sun and the other classical planets, what aspects they're forming, who's going retrograde, station direct, all of those things. Whenever there's eclipses, things like that. So that's something to avail yourself of. There's also these planetary placement videos that talk about different celestial bodies and different zodiac signs and the different places. So I have them all by playlist there. So if I don't have your placement in there, feel free to leave comments, and that's how usually I have these astrological dice that I just roll, and that's how I decide that. But if you have one that you want to request, definitely do that, and I put that on the top of the queue. So that's also there for you too. But yeah, that's all I got. So until next time, stay mindful out there. Keep eyes on that good old moon, especially once it's next to Venus. And I will catch you on the next one. Later.